Most entrepreneurs start from a point of aggravation. We're aggravated by something, we find a solution, we market that solution and find other people with the same problem. When I was a bricklayer in East London, I had no money and I was aggravated because I was thinking, is this my life? So I literally decided, and I was aggravated enough that I needed to associate with richer people. And I remember reading or hearing something about true wealth, but then wealth is always kind of like, oh, my family comes first and I found God. And I'm thinking, well, hang on, I'm not going to marry your wife and I'm not going to join your church. So how does that help me? So then I started looking for successful people. I'm a great believer that you need to change the room you're in. If you don't like you, change the room you're in, because you are a combination of the room you're in. If you're in a room full of billionaires, you've only got to listen to a couple of those chats and you become a byproduct of the room you're in.
Boy, do I have a podcast interview for you today. And let me warn you, this is not for the faint of heart. So if you are not the faint of heart, make sure you like, share, comment, and subscribe to this podcast, because I know that Steve Sims is going to take you for a ride. I'm just going to share a little bit about Steve for you, because I could not possibly give the full color of this guy's personality any better than he can do it for himself. So very briefly, Steve is the founder of the world's first luxury concierge. And I am going to let him tell you what that means, because he will blow you away. Steve has worked with the penthouse, with royalty, with presidents, with A-list celebrities, the rich, the famous, and the richer unknowns. So without further ado, buckle up as Steve Sims takes us for a ride. Welcome, Steve, and thank you so much for agreeing to do this interview.
I love the introduction when you said I worked at the penthouse. I think you mean the Pentagon.
Well, it's got a kind of a Freudian slip, but yeah, that's right. Exactly.
All right, I'll try and live up to the intro.
Oh, my goodness. So, Steve, start wherever you'd like. Look, I am all about relationships, right?
Right.
So this topic was written for you. So just start wherever you'd like, and I'll go along for the ride.
My story's no different to anybody else.
That's so not true. Listeners, this is so not true.
All right, okay. Hear me out and then tell me if you disagree. All right. Okay. Most entrepreneurs start from a point of aggravation. We're aggravated by something, we find a solution, we market that solution and find other people with the same problem. When I was a bricklayer in East London, I had no money. I had no friends that had money. And I was aggravated because I was thinking, hey, is this my life at the ripe old age of 16 and 17? Because I left school at the age of 15. At 16 and 17.
Wait a minute. You're not an Oxford scholar? I must have the wrong bio here.
Well, the funny thing is, I ended up lecturing at Harvard twice, which I still find hysterical. But they kicked me out of school, but then Harvard has me lecture. I just couldn't understand how I was supposed to get on. And we weren't fortunate enough, because both me and you remember an existence pre-Facebook, pre-internet. So I literally decided, and I was aggravated enough that I needed to associate with, and this is the first mistake, richer people, And when you're a kid,
you mean rich in money.
Well, that's the thing. And we can battle that down, but I believe there's three characteristics. I think there's rich, wealth, and success. And they all look at something different. But if you ask a 16-year-old, hey, when you've got everything and life's really good, what do you want? And they're all going to say things, I want to be rich. I want to be a millionaire. So they look at rich as financial. Mm-hmm. So when I was young, for me, success, wealth, it was all a dollar symbol. Mm-hmm. Or at the time, a pound symbol. And so I went out to kind of like, I want to meet people that have got money. in the East End of London, finding people with money wasn't always finding the most respectable individuals in the planet. So I had to kind of like change my focus. And I remember reading or hearing something about true wealth, and I was like, oh, but then wealth is always kind of like, oh, my family comes first and I found God. And I'm thinking, well, hang on, I'm not going to marry your wife and I'm not going to join your church. So how does that help me? So then I started looking for successful people. And that was the thing. That was the cornerstone. I wanted to, both me and you, we both know Joe Polish and Genius Network.
Sure. That's how we met.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. I'm a great believer that you need to change the room you're in. If you don't like you, change the room you're in, because you are a combination of the room you're in. If you're in a room full of billionaires, you've only got to listen to a couple of those chats and you become a byproduct of the room you're in. So I went out to try and find better rooms, started to have conversations. Bad.
But hang on, Steve, let me ask you a question. How did you know at 16, 17 years old to do that? Most 16-year-olds would keep fishing in the same pond, coming up empty-handed. So how did you know to do that? There must have been something innate.
There was a couple of pivot points. I remember turning up at the usual pub that I would on my motorbike that would work whenever it bloody liked to. And I walked into the bar, and as usual, I could afford, we always used to do this, I could afford just over 2 pints. And any of the change you'd throw in the middle of the table, you'd get as many pints out of what was ever left in the table, and you'd eke it out to everyone around the table.
This is clearly pre-COVID also.
Oh, this is pre-everything, This is like when I'm 17 years old, And I'm of course, in England, we had a much lower drinking age. But I'm sitting there.
It's 3. Somebody told me it's 3. Starts at 3.
That's the Italian drinking age. The Italian drinking age is 3. We try to be a bit more respectful in England. But I would sit there, and I remember this one day, and I'm not being funny, it was a Tuesday. And I remember sitting in this bar, couldn't afford any more beer. And I was pissed off because, I wanted to kind of lose myself in a couple of drinks. And I looked around the room and I thought, everyone in this room is a broke-ass biker. Everyone in this room is never going to amount to shit. So why am I in this room? And that was the last night I ever went to that room. And here's the daft thing. I could afford 2.5 beers in that pub. I went to one of these new trendy things they called wine bars because I wanted to see how these, rich people dealt with each other. And I could only afford 1 beer. And it was an exotic imported beer. And it always makes me laugh. Whenever I see it now, it was a Corona with a little bit of lime in the top. And that's what the exotic beer of the time was. And I could only afford 1. So I spent 4 hours drinking this shitty, tangy, piece of dredge. And I'm just looking around the world, just trying to see how.
Right, so now we've offended the Italians. We've offended the Mexicans. Go on.
Oh, it's going to keep on. Yeah, we don't care. We don't care. But and that's the thing. I was just pissed off. And you've met me. I'm a big, ugly lad. Can you imagine me, big and ugly, disorientated and angry?
I couldn't imagine anything worse. Like if I was in that room, with all due respect, or maybe not such respect, I'm out of that room, except for when we were at dinner at Maple and Oak.
Yeah. I was just in a bad way. I knew that I wasn't happy. And so in my angry mood, I would go into this room to try and communicate with people while being big, ugly, and angry. It wasn't working well.
Like
but you had to do that. We had to. But I just refused to accept. I think that's the thing about me. I refuse to accept until I'm satisfied. Mm-hmm. And even as a young age and arrogant, I was worse. Now we go, well, hang on a minute. We can't move that. So let's go around it. As a youngster, I was like, no, if I can't move it, I'm going through it.
Okay, so Steve, what you're saying is this is the mellow you.
Now is the mellow me. Now is the, yeah. Back then it wasn't, They always say, hey, would you like to go back and visit yourself? And I'm like, hell no. I was a walking time bomb. Luckily, and here's the daft thing, you'll find this funny. I wanted to up my game. And so I applied for a job, and this was now in the 80s. So I applied for a job as a trainee stockbroker. Now,
how old are you about? Ballpark?
Oh, 17, maybe just coming up to 18, maybe 18.
Okay,
maybe
so
18.
You're still a kid. You're still young. Okay.
Oh, yeah. Now, I was also, and there's a couple of little things you should be aware of, be aware of in this story. One, I was kicked out of school at 15. So I wasn't exactly a scholar, didn't know how to do any math stuff, knew nothing there. And secondly, I was also, because I was angry and I needed to funnel my anger into places, I was also fighting for the British kickboxing team. So I was young, angry, and at the time felt pretty invincible and not a great cocktail. So I turn up to this job. Believe it or not, I actually got the job. What they didn't tell me was the job was in Hong Kong.
Oh my, you know why? I believe you got the job because back in the day, honestly, Steve, I knew traders, people at those companies, and they wanted a blue collar kid that was hungry.
Yep.
Because the joke is Harvard's not always the smartest in the room, but they think they are. And you can't tell them anything because they know everything. All right. So now we put Harvard at the list of who we offended. Let's keep going. All right. So you're off to Hong Kong.
Yeah. So I got the job. Then they told me I was in Hong Kong. I went back to my girlfriend at the time, who I'm very thankful to say is my wife. We would have celebrated 37 years this year. So we've been together.
Kidding.
Yeah, we've been together forever. She's
She's
this whole thing.
She's a lovely woman. I've seen her. I'm like, wow, you got lucky, pal.
Oh, yeah, I did. And so when I came back and I went, look, I got the job. She was like, congratulations. And I was like, but it's the other side of the planet. It's in Hong Kong. She was like, well, what are you going to do? You're going to back out? Or are you going to go for it? I was like, well, she's thrown the gauntlet down now. So I went and I lasted 2 days and I got fired.
All right. What happened? You have to, I can only imagine.
Well, no, I don't think you can. They realized that, yes, you're right. They want hungry street people for the phone rooms and the trading rooms.
Right.
But I had none of the knowledge that went along with that hunger. I just didn't know how to add up 2 and 2. I knew nothing. And they had actually recruited, I think it was something like about 60 people. So I had got swept in with those guys. And they were like, we can't spend any energy on you. We've got to let you go. We've got to bring over some others. We don't have the time to train you up. So they fired me. And I ended up working on the door of this really shitty nightclub in Wan Chai, Hong Kong. And if anyone out there goes, oh, yeah, I know Wan Chai, then you're a deviant and you know it. Because this was
I never heard of it. I was just going to say, I never heard of it.
This is like these little streets, a few little streets where all of the parties and anything that could be done wrong was done in Wan Chai. Yeah.
Okay.
So I'm on the door of this thing. And as all entrepreneurs, and I have to quote our good friend, Dr. Sean Stevenson, Sean always used to say, and I heard this many, many years later, obviously, has it been done for you or to you?
To you, yeah.
And I remember that I had that mentality back then. When something happened to me, I'll be like, well, okay, is this for my benefit? And I noticed, and it was funny, I learned all of these things because I wasn't reading books. I obviously wasn't joining any courses. There was no internet. But I remember at the time that how I react to something is specified and dictated by how I see it. So if I see something as a good thing, even if it's a bad thing, I react to it in a positive. And guess what happens when you look at everything as a positive? It becomes positive. So working on the door, I was with these 2 other guys that basically just wanted to, punch people and then go home and get drunk. And me, I wanted to kind of like step, and I suddenly started watching humanity. The door is a brilliant place to see how people interact with each other. Like if you get a good bartender, has got social skills beyond anything Harvard could ever teach them.
Absolutely.
And I was learning this. So I would literally walk through the club only up to the people that were ordering bottle service and had private table. And I would say, hey, gentlemen, we're having a good time. And I would almost like act like the manager, to the point that the manager used to go, what are you doing? And I'd be like, I just want to make sure they're okay. I didn't. I wanted to get into their conversations. I wanted to get into their world. And then I realized one thing very, very easy. For me to converse with you, I've got to bring something to the party.
Mm-hmm.
All right? Mm-hmm. Very, very simple. And you say about relationships, if both people aren't winning in a relationship, it's not a relationship.
Correct.
So
Correct.
I would basically start saying to these people, hey, there's a private party going on Saturday. Do you want me to see if I can get you in? And I was trying to help them by becoming the Google of nightlife at the time.
You were the go-to guy.
I was the guy. And so then what I could do is I could say to them, hey, let's meet up for a coffee the following day. And that's when I'd be like, so what do you do? What are you getting for? And it was basically like a podcast of the late 80s and early 90s. Mm-hmm. And that's what I was doing. And my parties went from getting them into nightclubs, getting them into the unveiling of a new Ferrari, when Cartier would have a jewelry line launch, when there'd be an art gallery in their area.
Excuse me, and Steve, and you would find out about these things because you found that out from another table of people you were talking to, I would imagine.
I would always find
network.
Yeah, it was a network. And also by being a doorman, I would find out where the doormen were actually working at these special events. So I always focused on, here was the key thing. I always charged people for the access. Mm-hmm. I learned very early on, I don't know if this is an East London thing, if they don't pay, they don't pay attention.
They don't value. Yeah.
No. So
because anybody could get in. Anybody could be there. Right.
I'll be like, look, I can get you in here, but it's going to cost you $1,000. And they'll be like, oh, fine. And I realized very early on the powerful people, and especially the more powerful you got, they don't want to ask for favors because those favors, they accrue interest more than a mafia loan. So they don't want to be doing that. And it just exploded. I went from nightclubs to, Monaco Grand Prix, starred polo. I literally was flying around the planet at everything from, St. Jean Cap Ferrat to Stade to Palm Beach, Macau. I was just flying around the planet, hosting and being part of the biggest events in the planet to get all of these powerful, rich people into them. But it was all a Trojan horse. I wanted to have a conversation to find out why you were successful and I wasn't, and then I would go home and implement it.
So why reinvent the wheel? There was already a formula. Okay.
Damn right.
It's so interesting because people love people that are honest and transparent, right? So I will speak truth to power. You've met me. I'm this tiny little thing. I am like the mouse that roared. So when I work with CEOs, when I work with executives, I tell them, do you want me to tell you something that will make you feel good that everybody else is saying because you sign their checks? Or do you want the kid from Brooklyn response and the truth? And they always say the kid from Brooklyn response and the truth. It's probably not that different from where you grew up. Nobody speaks to the wealthy, the successful people with truth because everybody wants a piece of something. Yep. But if you're honest and you're transparent and you call it as you see it, because in their relationships at home, their spouses, I guarantee you, don't care. They might be setting the world on fire and they go home and the wife or the husband's like, oh, can you take the garbage out? Or the dog just threw up or the kid's crying. That's the truth when they're home. So they need that. At business, it's the same thing. Nobody tells them the truth. Even people that are paid to tell them the truth don't. So someone like Steve comes along and all bets are off and you call a spade a spade. So that's your brilliance, right? With the people connection, it's based on they know they can trust you, unlike other people. So if you say you're going to do something, you do it, or you'll figure it out. So
I've got to point something out for your magic and for your listeners, because I've got a big fat smile on my face now. I am thrilled that you used the word transparency and not authenticity. Authenticity, I hate that word, because when you turn around and go, oh, look at him, he's so authentic, you've just acknowledged that the rest of the planet is not. But the beautiful thing about transparency is because they can see through you to what you want and who you are. Mm-hmm. And that's a good thing. In today's world, a lot of people are scared about doing that, but it makes somebody else's decision capability easier, because they can go, well, I know he's trying to help me because he wants to have a chat with me. Or I know he's trying to do that because he wants me to work with him here. That's the beauty. So transparency should be our mouse pad, our T-shirt, our cap logo for the next 5 years. So congratulations. I'm very proud that you used that word.
Thank you. You probably brought it out in me, but I will tell you that what you're saying, which is so interesting, is that when you're transparent, there is no hidden agenda, right? No. Because people can see through. And it's so interesting, because the dinner that you and I met at, there was a couple of people I was speaking to. And one of the women said to me, oh my gosh, you are so transparent. You're so honest. And I said to them, honestly, I don't know how to be any other way. Yeah. It's who I am, and like you, I clearly do not have the private New England boarding school accent. And it took me a while moving from Brooklyn to Connecticut to not feel so self-conscious. I didn't have the private board, I didn't have any of that. And honestly, and I know your wife was instrumental for you, my husband was like, Patty Ann, you're smarter than all these people. You have more degrees. You can run circles around them. Honestly, Steve, it probably took me 10 years to own that. Now, I'm from Brooklyn. I call it as I see it. And I can call you out on your stuff, just like you. And people love that. And it's okay if it's not for everyone, right? Like you say all the time, full disclosure, everybody is not ready for Steve, right? And I love that, because when you're trying to be all things to all people, you're probably not, right? Okay, so here's the question you asked. You ask people, and I'm going to say it the way I would say it. The first time you meet somebody, you will say to them, if they want to work with you, what's your problem? Right?
Yeah.
Take us from there. What is that? What's your problem about?
So it was a funny little thing, but I realized everyone was charging more and more money. And so I literally put up this thing, look, I'll solve your problems. Pay me here. And it was like a little PayPal link. And I had a few people that started signing up, and it was supposed to be a little bit of a joke. I would phone them up, and I was kind of amazed that people were paying me to speak to them, And so I literally would say, what's your problem? Thinking, jokingly going, are you crazy? Are you mad? And the second I would ask that question, they'd be like, great question, Steve. It's this. I'm having an issue here. That's problematic. And they were telling me. So I realized that being very bold, and again, transparent, blunt, I don't care what you had for dinner last night. I don't care what you're binge watching on Netflix. If you're involved in my sandpit, I want to know what your problem is. And you telling me your problem, we can now get it out the way. We can actually solve it. And the good thing is, when you become the solution to somebody else's problem, they don't care what you look like. They don't care what you sound like. They have no care if you've got a pretty website or 1,000 awards. They care that you are the solution to that problem. And I just wanted to keep it down to that direct level of, I'm here to solve, not sell.
Right. So cut through all the noise. All right. So here's my question for you. Here's a little bit, a challenging question in a way. Okay. Many times when I'm working with people, they'll ask me a question, and my response to them will be, what's the real question? And they look at me. Many times they will tell me what the problem, they think the problem is. And my response is, what's the real problem? So how do you handle that? When someone presents a problem to you, and you know as well as I do that that's a bunch of bull. So where do you go from there?
So shallow plug for the book. I wrote Bluefish in the Art of Making
Plug
Things
away.
Happen.
Plug
and
away.
I actually wrote an entire chapter in there on that question. It's like you've read it or you wrote it before I actually wrote it.
And I'm sorry, I didn't read it, but I'm glad.
But here's how and you'll probably start doing this now as well. I got a sense that you actually will. I like, and this is a strange way of putting it, but I like confrontation. Okay. It gets a lot of things out of the way real quick.
Get them in their discomfort. Get them in the discomfort to change.
It also gets rid of weak people real fast. So you end up kind of talking to the people that you can tolerate and spend time with. So when people ask, when people give me something, whether it be a challenge, whether it be a problem, whether it be a question, I'm very confrontational with my answer with a 3-letter word. I look at them and I say, why? And they will say to me, hey, we need to be doing this. Why? I want to be going here. Why? I actually think, and again, I wrote this in the book, you got to ask why 3 times, because the first time someone talks to you, they are telling you what they think will make them sound smarter when you hear it. Okay. That doesn't help anyone. Okay. Number 2, they will start giving you the answers that they start to feel. And then number 3, they will give you that reason why. Mm-hmm. So by asking them why, they go, hey, I need to be focusing on scaling my business. Why? Well, I need to be doing this. No, why now? Why is it important? Why do you think that's the reason rather than reducing your clients and charging them 3 times as much? Mm-hmm. So we joke about it. We call it the Inner Sherlock. We go digging to find out where the why is. And then we actually get to that why. And that's where we start working from. We never, ever listen to the client's first question, because that's not the one. That's not the problem. That's not actually the real question. It's like when you interview someone, you never interview someone. You interview who that person wants to pretend to be for that hour. So we want to get into the why real quick.
Well, so it's so interesting that you say that, because, the people think one of the problems is they think they're addressing the wrong problem. So that's why they're not getting any traction. And, there's a classic coaching. I think it's like, you have to ask the question why 6 times. And I've said to people, I would like shoot myself. Like, why, what? To me, that means you don't know what you're doing. It's like basic coaching. You reflect back to somebody just what you heard them say. Well, okay, but you got to do something besides that. And I think it's true what you're saying, because so many people are living their lives, or maybe more importantly, Steve, trying to live a life that they think everybody else thinks will make them happy. Are you kidding me? Just because my favorite color is whatever, it doesn't mean your favorite color has to be that. So go ahead. You just reacted to that. Let me hear.
No, it's true. People today are too worried about what they look and sound and act like rather than who they are. But they don't realize that while they're spending so much time trying to be this other person, the person can't connect with them because they're not them.
But they don't know who they are. That's the problem.
A lot of people are scared. You see, and you've got to put that down to today's world. We're in a gotcha society. We want to trip you up with what you said 20 fucking years ago. We don't care. We want to laugh at you when you fail. We want to cancel you when you say something that we can take out of context and then disown you. We're in a society like that now, where a lot of people are therefore scared to stand up. But in order to stand out, you first of all got to stand up.
So what do you think's changed? Do you think people have always been trying to live somebody else's life, somebody else's dream? Do you think it's just amplified now because of social media?
We've always tried to impersonate those that we want to be. That's never changed. Okay. And to a part, emulating those that you want to become, that's fine. Like I'm great friends with some very powerful people. And I literally in the moment of a tough situation will go, well, what would Jay do? What would Roland do? What would Bill do? What would Tony do? And that helps me get through. That's a different sense to what it is now. Now it's become very visual, down to the point where, you're not successful unless you're doing a selfie on a jet that you don't own or leaning up against a car you don't own. Yeah. We've become very superficial for fear. It's actually fear of exposing who we are. And we're going to go full circle to actually being transparent. You see, I believe there are three kinds of people in the planet, okay? There's those that love you, no matter what you say, wherever you go. And I guarantee you there's people on this podcast now going, I absolutely love Steve Sims. I think he's brilliant. What he's saying, it spits truth. He's my boy. And then there are other people that are probably turned off going, I hate Steve Sims. I never want to hear from that guy again. Can't understand what he's saying. Don't want anything to do with him. And that's fine. Both of those people are fine. The worst species in the world are the ones that you've created. And those are what I call the fence sitters.
Yeah, the chameleons. Yeah,
those people that are sitting there going, I don't get what Steve's trying to say. I'm not sure. And that's your fault.
I don't know, Steve, you're pretty clear. If people don't get you, you're pretty clear.
But in today's world, a lot of people are not allowing those fence sitters to make a decision. So you end up with three kinds of people in your world. You only need two. Those that say yes, those that say no. And with the amount of people in the planet, you can be buying beach houses every month with those that love you. So be transparent enough to push the fence sitters off one way or the other. Why are you complicating who you are? Why are you adding confusion to the communication? It makes no sense.
Well, what do you think? What's your answer to that?
And it goes back to square one, the first 3 seconds of this podcast. Be transparent, call it as it is. I want to do this for you. It's going to cost you $25,000, and this will be what happens when it comes through to the end. Okay. Any questions? No, fine. Push here. I want you to be as transparent and as direct. We're also in an amplified and heightened sense of aggravation. Over the last few years, you couldn't have made this up. Pandemics, challenges, Me Too, Asian hate, Black Lives Matter, politics, and now a war. You just could. What, the aliens landing next Tuesday? You can't make this shit up. And so we're all kind of like prairie dogs. What the hell's going on? We don't have time to sift through your bullshit and shiny website to work out whether or not you've got the answer to my problems. I want to go to a website and go, you do this, this happens. Great. Makes it very easy for me to make a educated decision on whether or not you can handle my problem. I'm in. Stop confusing people. It's not working. And in today's society, it's repelling.
Well, and people are getting confusing messages to boot. So what do you find, Steve, with the rich and famous that you work with, right? We both know they're not really all that different than us, than everybody else.
Yeah.
It's actually, the problem is they have the sycophants all around them that tell them what they want to hear. But, all the money in the world doesn't raise your kids for you. It actually might make it more complicated, right? You're not really sure if people really want to be your friends or if people want to be friendly to you because they want access to what you have and what they can give you. So what do you see as a universal quest for success?
So when I was young and obnoxious, and yes, I was even more obnoxious back then.
Yeah, I was wondering about that. Okay.
Yeah, no, it wasn't very pretty. When I used to look after people, I used to go over to them and I'd be like, hey, Johnny, I've got to ask you, how come you're rich and I'm not? And you can imagine that was a horrible question. And the friction and the temperature just changed.
Yeah.
And I realized if I don't like the answer, it's because I'm asking the wrong question. And so I tried that question a few times, got nowhere. And then the next time I tweaked it to, wealthy. And that's when I'd get things like, I found my wife and I found religion and I found meditation and all these kind of things that didn't help me. Okay. Because you've got to find your own path.
Correct.
Then the third question I tweaked it to was, how come you're successful and I'm not? And that was my holy grail. That was my unload of education onto me. People would tell me about how they looked at things, how they viewed opportunity. I noticed quite a few things, and you're right. Successful people are usually really talented with one or two things.
They're lame.
Yeah. People like Elon Musk, who's been in like 3 or 4, he's a unicorn of today.
Right.
But if you look at all of the others, whether it be Bill Gates, Richard Branson, Warren Buffett, they're all good at like one, maybe the second one, but you usually find the second one is very similar to the first and nothing more than just a branch out.
Variation, yeah.
Yeah, with the right people behind them. So the rest of them, they're just the same as us. They're just normal people. You see, I've always said rich people are poor people with a lot of money.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And so you got to talk to them like normal people. But they do have certain things that happen to them when they start getting into that flow. One of the biggest things that I noticed was a trait, a habit, a repeat within all of the most powerful people I've ever dealt with was how they view time. And the bottom line is they know they can make more money.
Right.
They know with effort they can make more impact, but they can never make more time. So whenever you have a conversation with someone that's very successful, they're like, so what are you doing? How are you doing it? Why do you think you can do it? What's going to be the impact? How are you going to be able to scale it? How are you going to be able to do it when you have to remove yourself out of the process? When you remove yourself out, does that stop? It's almost like being grilled. You expect someone to put the torch on you, but they want to know because they don't care what you had for dinner last night. They want to care what impact you're generating. And that was the biggest thing I noticed. They view time differently.
Well, it's so interesting you say that because I tell people all the time, beware the time vampires. We all know who they are in our life, right? And I am amazed. Do you get this, Steve? I am amazed at smart people I talk to that you see them every once in a while, like, but you have a relationship, right? They're not your BFFs, but you know them. They ask me the same damn questions every time I see them. Were you not listening the first time? And I really feel, I don't take it personally towards me, but I feel like they're not truly listening. So I'm wondering if the people that you're talking about, and I'm accused of like, my kids will tell you, Mom, oh my God, it's like an interrogation. I'm like, well, I want to know who you're with, where you are, how long, right? And it's part of my work. I ask questions. It's important because I can't assume anything. So how do the wealthy, successful people handle the time vampires?
They don't talk to them. They literally, and that actually links nicely into the relationship side. They only work with people, and here's a funny thing. We all know the kind of like, oh, that sounds great. Let's do lunch. Oh, let's play golf. Let's do cocktails and discuss that further. And you think to yourself, well, that's what rich people do. For some reason, they just want to go and have lunch with everyone and play golf with everyone and have cocktails with everyone, That's what rich people do. They're kind of weird like that. I discovered that I was wrong. You see, I discovered that for those people, they weren't discussing the project. They were discussing the person. See, Cameron Harold's very good at it. He talks about hiring on culture.
I love that man. I love that man.
If you focus on aligning yourself, like if you bring someone in that shares the same culture, the same vision, the same belief, the same commitment, if they can't fill out an Excel spreadsheet, I can buy someone that can. Who cares? The bottom line of it is affluent, successful people, they recruit culture, and any of those weaknesses, they bring people in to either plug that in or they teach you how to do it. And that was the key thing. They don't bother about vampires. They literally will be they will just disown them. I had a friend of mine once who taught me this early on. This guy was pestering him for a conversation, and he was definite that these two people were not on a cultural line. They would never get on. He took him to one side and he said, look, I appreciate your energy and wanting to have a conversation with me, but me and you, we're not on the same wavelength. We won't have a conversation, let alone a relationship. And you're going to waste all of this night trying to have one with someone that you won't. So I suggest, with respect, divert your energy over there, because I think that person's going to be a lot more in alignment with you. And he was very polite, very respectful.
That was a gift. That was a gift.
That's what he did. And I was like, Mike, I didn't see it as rudeness. I saw that the guy had helped him. And do you know the weird thing? At the end of the night, the guy actually came up and said, thank you. I heard you and I appreciate you. Thank you. And then he was like, you're welcome. Now they didn't become friends. They don't have a relationship, but it stopped him wasting a night full of incredible people in that room.
Well, and that brings us to something else, right? What do you see as the biggest obstacles for people to receive your help? Like you vetted them,
Yeah, it's classic. The biggest problem is always going to be you. Too many people.
What about you?
Well, two things: fear and humiliation. People are scared of trying things different for fear of it failing. And here's the daft thing: rarely are they worried about failing, because I guarantee you fail a lot. I fail a lot, but that's where the education is.
But that's great. It's fun.
It's wonderful.
Energizes.
The daft thing is, people are not scared of failing. They're scared of people hearing about it and laughing. And have you always noticed that the people that are laughing at someone else failing are usually the idiots sitting on their bar stool that are never going to amount to anything?
Yeah.
So people today need to go, hey, what would I do if I didn't care about someone giggling at me? In fact, I'm writing a second book. I'm not pitching it because I don't know when it's going to come out.
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
I don't know when the thing's coming out, but it's called Go for Stupid.
Me neither.
It's called Go for Stupid because I noticed the people that I've got to work with not only have not cared about you laughing at them, but themselves have only gone for the goals that are in the ridiculous and stupid area. And they want to have a goal that's so ridiculous, you will laugh at it just before you applaud for achieving it.
So I've got to tell you, I am not at all, and you've met me, and you know, you're getting to know me well enough now. I am not a hero worshiper at all. Like, I don't know who the famous movie stars is. I could care less. I could walk by them on the street in Fifth Avenue, could care less. I love sports, but they're people. We all get it. But after I read his bio years ago, his first authorized bio, his only authorized bio, anyone that knows me will tell you, I am the hugest fan of Elon Musk because of what you just said. He defies the naysayers every time, and I love it. Keep laughing at him. I'm going to go to the moon. And he does it. And he has courage that is untethered. And is that what you're talking about?
Yeah, the actual line I got about, they always laugh at you before they applaud. I actually got that from Elon when we were walking through his Hawthorne SpaceX plant. So he was the guy that actually gave me that quote. I've been fortunate enough to spend time with the guy a few times, and he is as incredible as you believe him to be.
Yeah. And again, I think he's a little different, but nobody's changed the world looking through the world through the lens of
he doesn't care. You think he cares?
Right?
No, he doesn't. And that's the whole point. He really doesn't care. He's focused on the impact he can generate. The fact that you're giggling at him because, the stone went through his truck.
That's on you.
One of the fuel cells. Those people giggling are still freaking packing bags in the local grocery store. He doesn't even recognize you, let alone hear you.
Correct. Well, and that's what I love about him. He has public failures. To me, he is what our children need to learn because we coddle them. All success starts with failure. Fail fast, fail fast, fail forward. And now what can you learn? All right. So I have a question for you. I'm really curious how you square this circle. Is that what you say? Okay. Here. So people are afraid of fear. People are afraid of humiliation. However, here's what's interesting, right? Since the dawn of time, people have always wanted more, like more, because if we didn't, right, back in the day, if we didn't learn to sharpen a stick to make a spear, the saber-toothed tiger would have killed us. So where's the disconnect between people wanting more and people being afraid? Because you can't achieve more without accepting, conquering your fear. So help us understand that.
I think society is not doing us a lot of favors. I think society is getting to a point. You lived in Brooklyn, I lived in East London. We could have swapped addresses and we'd have been the same folks.
Right. Brooklyn back in the day when it was really Brooklyn, and I wouldn't trade it for the world.
Yeah, no, you think it was rough and you think it was horrible and you got a few slaps every now and then, but, it's what made you the person you are now. I think we're growing up in a safe zone that isn't. Everyone is holding up their phones when they attack someone, thinking that that's a invincibility cloak now. And we're all getting concerned about our feelings, and we have to do. It's annoying. It's not only annoying. It is. You say about the saber tooth. What do you think would happen if suddenly all the power went off in the planet and we did have to fend for ourselves again? There'd be a lot of people dead by the weekend.
Anarchy.
Okay.
Anarchy.
It would be pure anarchy and panic.
Yeah.
So the old saber-toothed tiger was a point of consequence. Mm-hmm. If you didn't invent this, if you didn't discover how to get over that, the consequence was you were dead. Okay, the saber-tooth would kill you. We're losing consequence now. It's very easy for us to stand there and go, well, I don't agree with that. I'm gonna protest about that. That's not gonna happen. Defund the police, kick these people out. Let's not do that.
Don't build walls.
And then we go,
don't build walls.
Yeah.
As I live behind a wall.
The problem is we are living without consequence. I remember once I went up to a guy in East London, and again, I was an arrogant prick. And, the guy was there, and I started messing around with him. And a guy came up and just slapped me, not punched me, just slapped me in the face. And I was a kid, just knocked me to the floor. And I got up, and the guy that I was talking to wasn't getting riled up, just he wasn't even the one that ordered the other guy to slap me. But it was at that moment in time I realized I had just messed with the wrong person in this area. Mm-hmm. And there were people you messed with, and there were people you didn't. Mm-hmm. And getting a slap, again, like Sean said, that was good for me, because it could have been a lot worse. And I realized what had happened. My consequence, the following day I came in, I'm not trying to make it like a scene from The Sopranos, but I came in the following day, I asked permission to speak to the gentleman, and I apologized for my rudeness, my immaturity, and it all went. But we had consequences then. You did this, you got that. Now we don't. We want to complain and whinge and think the world. Look at it. I'm gonna spout this. The amount of people that have got payouts during COVID more than the money they ever bloody earned. And now that COVID is alleviated and we're all going back to work, they're sitting there in the houses going, I can't go back to work. I don't want to go to work. I like being at home. Fucking grow up and get out. I cannot believe how people so rapidly become weak.
Well, it's so interesting you say that, because part of it also is, everybody gets a trophy. Like, this cracks me up. Like, playing
participation.
Baseball. You're playing baseball, right? 3 pitches, the kid, 3 strikes, you're out. Great job, Joey. No, Joey, you sucked. Now, you want to learn. So I totally get that. The removal from the consequence. Another little story. So I knew somebody that coaches football at one of the military academies in the States, right? This is years ago. I'm not going to name names. And what he said to me is, now these are supposedly the best of the best, not from a football perspective, but from a people, right? And long story short, these kids are the best physical shape ever. They had personal training, but here, weak. And I was shocked when the person said that to me. I don't want the military people. I love the military. I don't want people writing to me, but there's a disconnect between
we're upsetting everybody.
And the truth. and the truth. Okay, I'm gonna let you do this because you mentioned it. So I want you to give yourself a plug. And I wasn't going to, but I know it's public knowledge now because I saw it on Facebook. It must be true. Okay. All right. So you're hanging with Tony Robbins. What on God's green earth was going on there?
So I've been very fortunate for the past years to speak on some great stages. And I got booked. I'm doing an event with Richard Branson in September and Gary Vee at the end of April. And out of the blue, I got contacted by Tony Robbins people to speak on his stage. And the downside was it was in April on my son's birthday and they wanted me in Palm Beach. And I was like, I want to do this, but it's my kid's birthday.
The son I met? The son that I met at the restaurant?
No, my youngest one. I've got two. Okay. And so I was like, I can't do it. It's my son's birthday. I'd love to do it. And so they're booking me another day. They got loads of events, but they're looking through their calendar at the moment to see which ones can work in. But yeah, I'm gonna be up there with the big T himself, which is kind of cool. Very cool. So
congrats to you. Okay, Thank you. 2 questions for you. 2 more before I let you go. Although I want to keep you forever. What's the one most important thing about life that you've learned that you want everybody to know?
My dad, big Irish lump of a fella. He couldn't read a Chinese menu. He wasn't the sharpest tool in the shed. And I remember one day walking through London with him, and I was like about 13 years old. And this guy would chain smoke. And when I say chain smoke, one was in his mouth, another one was in his hand, ready for this one to run out. He could light it and then continue. He always had 2 cigarettes at the same time. It was one of his things.
Back in the day,
yeah. And we're walking through London, and he puts his hand on me with the unlit cigarette, takes the other one out of his mouth, and didn't even look at me. But as we're walking, he went, "Son, no one ever drowned by falling in the water. They drowned by staying there." And then he puts his cigarette back in his mouth and carries on walking. Now, at the age of 13, I stopped and I was like, what the hell was that? And I thought I'd just been consumed by a fortune cookie or something. And it made no sense to me. He never made a comment about it. He never hinted at it. He never brought that up ever again. But it stuck with me. And every time my face planted in the water, I realized this is my decision as to whether or not I stay or not. So I would lay that one to him.
It's being done for you.
I would lay that one for him.
All right. So here's my next question. And I swear it's not a trick question. I swear.
Okay.
What's the last book you reread and why?
Oh, the last book I reread. I think that's the catch there. Reread. I think it was probably The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo.
Are you kidding?
No, what? I'm not. You see, and this, I like books that get my imagination going. Mm-hmm. Okay. I love reading books. I love hooks. I love Ryan Holiday. I love J. Abraham. I love Cameron Howard. But all of those books get me actioning. Okay. Mm-hmm. I like books that take me into a state of dreaming. I love the Da Vinci Codes. I love the Dragon Tattoo books. I can imagine the gangs, the places, unrevealing all the codes. I think today we need to dream and imagine more. So when I get a book like Cameron Howard's, and he's got so many great books, the book will be shredded. Don't ever try and borrow a book from me. It's highlighted, it's circled, it's torn out. That book is a workbook for me. So I don't go back to it because I've made all the comments and I'm actioning it. Mm-hmm. But I do like to go back to books that just take me into a faraway place.
All right. Can I make a comment on that?
Yeah.
Okay. I'm going into a free coaching mode here.
Go for it. That
absolutely, from where I come from, explains your brilliance and your success, and I will tell you why.
Okay.
When we immerse ourselves in somebody else's story in the manner in which you just said, we are imagining their reality. And when we imagine somebody else's reality, it is one of the fastest roads to creating empathy. And empathy is at the heart of a connection. And you cannot have a relationship based on trust without a connection. There you go.
All right. Well, that makes you sound a lot smarter than it was, but thank you very much.
No, I think there's something so intuitive about you. And honestly, I do, because I take it myself, your working class background. You know, when you play street ball, when you play stick ball, nobody cares about what you're wearing. Nobody cares about where you're from. Either you hit 2 balls past the sewer and it's a double, or you didn't. And if you don't like it, you fight your own battles, but you better be home for dinner at 5 or 6 o'clock, and nobody cares, right? So there were consequences to your behavior. All right, so tell people how they can learn more about you, Steve.
Well, I got Bluefish in the Art of Making Things Happen, which is my book. But you can find out everything you need to at Steve D. Sims, and that's D for dashing and 1 M in Sims, stevedsims.com. But if you like playing on social, funny enough, I'm Steve D. Sims everywhere. Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn. Probably my biggest following is on Instagram. So Steve D. Sims, anywhere that you consume.
All right. Well, thank you so much. I so appreciate your time. I know, as promised to my listeners, you took us for a ride. So make sure that you like, comment, share, and subscribe to today's podcast. And we'll see you next time. Thanks, Steve.
Bye.